Okay guys, welcome back to the layout. Tonight we're doing a little bit of a project update. As you can see, I have a bunch of locomotives lined up. A bunch of these are already complete with the install, things I've been working on over the last couple of months. You can see one here in the front I'm in the process of just finishing up, and there's a few here at the end that I'm getting ready to start work on. Just want to hit some of the highlights of what I've done. Some of the stuff's pretty straightforward. Some of the stuff I've tried something new and it's worked out pretty well. And just wanted to share that with you and give you guys a couple of ideas maybe you can use on your layout. Okay guys, first up is a Proto Unit. I wasn't sure if this was a E7B or an E8B. I think it's an E8. And if it's not, I'm sure one of you guys out there will let me know. But this is what the inside looks like. And as you can tell, they're not using the NMRA standard colors. They're using orange and green for the track wires and yellow and black for the motor wires. There's a little harness at the end, and this had a dummy plug that sat right in here, and I removed that. This is the decoder that I decided to use, Soundtracks. There's the model number, there's where I got it from and what I paid for. And what I did was I snipped off the 8-pin NMRA harness, and I resoldered the wires into what was the dummy plug of the unit. Now you got to use the correct NMRA colors to go to the wires here. So orange is not orange, green is not green, yellow is not yellow. Your track wires are red and black, and your motor wires are orange and gray. So those are the colors you got to use when you're plugging them into the harness. But once we put that in, I'm not sure if I can do this one-handed, but it'll just kind of go in just like that. Test it out and it's pretty much ready to go. Okay, so here's what it looks like on the layout with the harness plugged in to the locomotive where the dummy plug was. What I'm probably going to do is take a little piece of styrene and glue it to the top of this and rust the decoder on top of that so the wires don't get caught up in the mechanism and the drive in here. But just to give it a little bit of juice to make sure it works, we'll just beautiful. And it crawls at speed step 1 without any programming. Okay, next up is a group of Authored engines. The first 4 are blue box kits. They're about 25 years old. The last one at the end is a ready to roll unit. It's about 7 or 8 years old. The ready to roll unit is the lesser expensive of the ready to roll units, meaning that it's not DCC ready. It does not have the quick plug quick technology in it. So basically it puts that in the same type of group as the kits, and it's the same type of install. I did some of these off camera already, so I'm going to take one of them that I haven't done. I'm going to show you real quick what I did. Okay, so I'm at my workbench and I have 3 of the locomotives here for you to see. But before I get into the install and what I did, I want to talk a little bit about the decoders. And what I have here is 2 different decoders by Digitrax. Now in my earlier videos I used these quite a bit. This is a DH123D, and also its counterpart, the DH164D, which is a mobile and sound. This one's just a mobile. I used these because they were relatively inexpensive. I think I was getting them for about $18, and they worked. And over time I've decided to get away from these a little bit, and the reason being is the profile is a little bit thick. When we get to installing these, trying to set these up on top of here and putting the shell on, it didn't always quite fit real well. And the speed table on these required a little bit more programming out of the package as opposed to other decoders. Some of the nice things about these, and these are cut a little bit short, but this came with a wiring harness where you're able to cut the wire to size and you were able to place it to the various different parts of the locomotive, which was kind of nice. And also if you had a Authored or other manufacturer that had a quick plug type of light board on there, you're able to remove the dummy plug and simply pop this in its place, going in like that. That made things for, made it real nice and easy for an install. But what I decided to do was start to go to a decoder like this guy here. This is a DH165AO, and there's a few different variations of this, and you can see what I paid for it. They're a couple dollars more, but I like the profile on this a lot better. It's a bit longer, but as you can see, it's a lot thinner. It sits on top of the locomotive a lot easier, as you can see with these other ones here that are already installed. Hooking up the wires are very easy by soldering them onto the various different tabs and pads in the correct positions. And the speed table out of the package is set a lot better, very little if any programming at all. So I've decided to go with these for my mobile installs. And if you wanted to add sound down the road, there is a place here in the back if you wanted to add a sound bug. I actually have it on here backwards, but you can add the sound bug portion to this, and they run in tandem to this down the road if you want to do as well. Okay, so the first example I have is the Blue Box F45. And as you can see, I've used the correct NMRA color wires for the various different components. You got red and black for track power. You've got gray and orange for your motor or mechanism. You've got blue for the common for the lighting, white for the headlight, green for the one of the light effects. So all the NMRA colors are there. If I flip this over, you can see holes have been drilled out for the headlight. I did that with my dad about, I don't know, 25 years ago, like I said. We didn't know what we were doing, so they're really kind of big. The lights are in there, a little sloppy. Little CA glue, they stick pretty nicely in there. It's not perfect, but for an engine that's this old, it's nice to have some life again. And also we added the little rotary beacon where the horn's supposed to go. Again, we did that a long time ago. The original LED that was there was hooked up to an N battery with a capacitor and a resistor and some other kind of diode that made it flash every now and then. And that's all been hooked up now to the decoder. And I'll show you that towards the end of the video, what that looks like. The GP9, as you can see, I've only used two different colors here. The wiring is pretty simple, so if you only have one or two colors available to you and you keep everything straight, it's not very difficult to do the install. And again, we've got some LED lights in the front and in this one also in the back. Having a high hood gives you a little bit more room to do some of that. And you can kind of sort of see them in there. I think these were drilled out. I didn't drill these out, the owner drilled them out. So that was kind of already done for me. And basically what I'm doing is just going to go over some of the steps on this guy and how I did all that, and we'll go from there. Okay, first what you're going to do, of course, after removing the shell, as you can see this one's missing some of the detail parts, so we'll get those on a little bit later, is going to be removing the clip that gives you power from the trucks to the motor, and we're going to remove the light for the cab light and the bracket, because I'm going to be putting in LED lights in the front and back like I did on the other examples I just showed you. Okay, next thing you're going to do is take these motor mounts, you're going to push them through and take the motor off of the frame or chassis. If you're careful, you can do it without having to remove the worm gear housing and the linkage. It'll just kind of wiggle and pop itself out and the motor will be free. Okay, here's what it should look like when the motor's been removed. Take a quick note of what your motor mounts look like. The ears have not been real kind in these, so they've gotten pretty hard and brittle. And I'm going to have to put some new ones in there when I go to put the motor back in. Also, if you want to take the time to replace the motor with an Northern Genesis motor or some kind of Ken motor, this is also a good time to do that. The owners opted to keep the stock motor in there. It runs well enough for them, so that's what we're going to do here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to isolate the motor from what would normally be contacted with the frame. That's by these little tabs here. We're just going to kind of wiggle them back and forth till they pop off. and those would normally make contact with that little strip right there. And we're also going to put a little piece of electrical tape on that, so again the motor is isolated from the frame, and then we're going to put it back together in just a moment. Okay, so we've added the piece of electrical tape, we've added the new motor mounts, we've removed the tabs from the bottom of the motor, and I've soldered my first wire in its place, giving it just a few inches, and I'll show you where that goes in just a moment. But next we're going to take this and flip it upside down, reinstall it back into the frame of the locomotive. Okay, now the motor has been seated back into the frame of the locomotive. You know it's seated correctly when you can just turn the flywheel gently like that, nothing's binding or hitting the frame, and it's moving right along the benchwork like that. Here's the bottom wire I showed you a moment ago, and you want to run that just alongside the motor mount. And we've also soldered our second wire here to the top of the motor. And again, I'm not using NMRA standard wires. You can kind of use whatever colors you want. In this case, I'm just using red and blue, and that'll work just fine. Okay, next thing I've done is I've cut off a length of some non-conductive double-sided adhesive tape, and I've placed that right on the top of the motor, right over where I soldered that last wire, just like that. And what I'm going to take is the decoder, and I'm going to seat that right there in the center of that, and press that gently but firmly onto the top of that so it holds well. This is the front of the locomotive. This is where the light for the cab used to come out, right over here. These three pads represent the front of the decoder. The bracket for the sound bug represents the back. If you have the side with all of the various different components in the back, you know you've got it upside down. This is the correct side up. And just seat that right there, and we'll get to soldering some other wires. Okay, so the next thing I did was solder the two wires that we installed in the motor to the decoder. And whatever color wire you're using, in this case the red wire, which went to the bottom, goes on the right side, and the blue wire that I used, which was on the top of the motor, went on this left side here. The next thing that I did was I started to solder the wires for the track power, and these are on these posts that are right here on the kit. And one wire going up to this back tab, and also the same thing on the other side, one coming from this post to the back tab. You don't want to cross them, you got to make sure they're both on the back tab. Or if you want to run them long hood forward, you can run them both to the front tab. But in either case, they have to be the same tab on both sides or you're going to have a short. Make sure you leave a little bit of wiggle room here so the truck can rotate freely. You don't want too much, and I could probably shorten this a little bit to where you have access, but again, just enough so your truck will turn without hindrance on both sides of the locomotive. Okay, I've taken my Dremel and I've cleaned off some of the paint and the frame, so my solder makes a good strong connection onto the frame here. And I've soldered that wire to the front tab of the decoder. The trucks touch the frame does become part of the circuit, so you only have to do this once, you don't need to do it on the other side. Some of my other videos I've talked about taking this plastic side frame off and soldering it there, if you can see it okay through the camera. You can certainly do that, but this seems to work out okay, and may not be worth the effort unless you want to go through all that. So beyond here, next thing is to do is, or to do rather, is to put on a layout and do a quick little bench test, and we can get to the lighting.